The room is quiet, but not calm. It is just after midnight on December 5th, 1941, deep inside the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. Outside, winter presses against the windows, cold and sharp. Inside, a single man stands over a map that stretches across the wall like a wound that will not close. Red and blue pins mark hundreds of miles of territory. Some are still moving forward, many have stopped. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. Adolf Hitler does not blink. He does not ask questions. He does not wait for reports. He trusts only one thing now: himself. Imagine it now. The smell of stale air, the low hum of electric lights, the silence broken only by the sound of a man breathing slowly as he stares at the Eastern Front. Outside this room, millions of soldiers are freezing, bleeding, and dying. Inside, the fate of the war is being decided by instinct, not expertise. This is the moment when professional judgment finally loses the war. Not because the generals were stupid, not because Germany lacked experience, but because one man had slowly convinced himself that his intuition was greater than any trained military mind. And that belief did not appear overnight. It was built, layer by layer, year after year, victory after victory, until reality itself could no longer break through. To understand why Hitler replaced professional judgment with personal intuition, you have to go back to a much earlier time, long before the war turned against him, back to when trusting his gut seemed to work. In November 1918, Germany collapsed. The First World War ended in defeat, chaos, and humiliation. Hitler was a nobody then, a wounded corporal in a broken army. He did not rise through military schools. He did not learn strategy from textbooks. What he learned instead was resentment. He believed Germany lost not because of poor planning, but because of betrayal, weakness, and lack of will. That belief would shape every decision he made later. When Hitler entered politics in the early 1920s, he carried that lesson with him. He distrusted experts. He distrusted institutions. He distrusted anyone who told him limits existed. To him, Germany did not fail because generals made mistakes. Germany failed because leaders lacked belief. By the time he became Chancellor on January 30th, 1933, that mindset was already hardened. But the real danger did not appear until his instincts began delivering results. In March 1936, Hitler made a move that shocked Europe. German troops marched into the Rhineland, a region Germany was forbidden to militarize under the Treaty of Versailles. His own generals were terrified. They warned him the army was not ready. They warned France could crush them in days. Hitler listened, nodded, then ignored them. He ordered the troops in anyway. They marched with instructions to retreat if the French responded. But France did nothing. Britain did nothing. Hitler won without a fight. That single moment changed everything. From that day forward, Hitler did not see his generals as wise professionals who had saved Germany from disaster. He saw them as men who almost talked him out of greatness. His intuition, he believed, had beaten their caution. The pattern repeated again and again. In March 1938, Germany absorbed Austria, the Anschluss. Once more, warnings came from diplomats and officers. Once more, that Hitler ignored them. Once more, nothing stopped him. Crowds cheered, borders vanished. His confidence grew stronger. Then came September 1938 and the Sudetenland crisis. Hitler threatened war. Europe panicked. Britain and France gave him what he wanted at Munich. No shots fired, no consequences. Each success carved a deeper belief into his mind. He was not lucky. He was chosen. He saw patterns others could not see. He felt history moving through him. By the time the war began in September 1939, with the invasion of Poland, Hitler already believed professional judgment slowed victory. His generals planned carefully. Hitler pushed for speed and shock. When Poland collapsed in weeks, he took full credit. The fall of France in May and June 1940 sealed it. France had been considered the strongest army in Europe. Its generals were experienced. Its defences were massive. Hitler's own high command expected a long, brutal war. Hitler, however, insisted on a bold plan through the Ardennes forest, a route most professionals considered too risky. When German tanks burst through and Paris fell in 6 weeks, it felt like proof from destiny itself. From that point on, Hitler no longer saw himself as a political leader guiding a military machine. He saw himself as a military genius, correcting timid professionals. He began attending operational briefings not as a listener, but as the final authority. He interrupted officers. He dismissed concerns. He rewrote orders personally. The more experienced a general was, the more suspicious Hitler became of him. To Hitler, experience meant habits. Habits meant fear. Fear meant weakness. By 1941, this mindset had fully taken control. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, began on June 22, 1941. It was the largest military operation in history. Millions of men, thousands of tanks, endless columns stretching across forests, fields, and rivers. At first, everything seemed to confirm Hitler's beliefs. Soviet armies collapsed. Entire divisions were encircled. Cities fell. The advance felt unstoppable. But the professionals saw something else. They saw distances that could not be closed. Supply lines stretched thin. Fuel shortages. Rail gauges that did not match German trains. Weather that would soon turn lethal. Hitler saw none of that as decisive. He believed the Red Army was finished. He believed one final push would end the war. As autumn approached, the generals urged caution. They argued for consolidation. They argued for preparing for winter. A Hitler rejected it all. He believed the Soviets were already broken. He believed momentum mattered more than logistics. In September 1941, he personally intervened, splitting his forces. Some went south toward Kiev. Others pushed toward Leningrad. The drive toward Moscow slowed. This was no longer strategy. It was instinct. By October, the weather turned. Rain transformed roads into rivers of mud. Vehicles stalled. Horses collapsed. Supplies failed to arrive. Soldiers froze at night and fought by day. The generals pleaded again. Pull back, regroup, shorten the line. Hitler refused. On December 5, 1941, Soviet counteroffensives smashed into exhausted German units outside Moscow. Temperatures dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Engines failed. Weapons jammed. Men froze where they stood. Still, Hitler would not listen. On December 8th, he issued a direct order forbidding retreat. Units were to hold their positions at all costs. To the professionals, this was madness. To Hitler, retreat meant weakness. And weakness, in his mind, was how Germany lost the last war. He blamed the army, not the conditions. He blamed officers, not his own decisions. From that moment on, his distrust of professional judgment turned into open hostility. Experienced commanders were dismissed, sidelined, or ignored. Promotions went to men who obeyed without question. The high command became an echo chamber. Briefings turned into performances, carefully worded to avoid angering the man at the head of the table. Hitler no longer asked what could be done. He declared what must be done. The war was now being fought on intuition alone, and intuition does not feel hunger. It does not freeze. Tami, it does not bleed. As the months passed, this pattern hardened. Every failure was blamed on disobedience. Every loss was blamed on lack of will. Reality itself became the enemy. And the deeper the crisis grew, the more tightly Hitler clung to his instincts. Because to admit error would mean admitting that his intuition was flawed. And that was something he could never accept. By early 1942, the atmosphere inside Hitler's headquarters had changed completely. It was no longer a place where ideas were tested. It was a place where orders flowed in one direction only. Maps were still pinned to the walls, but they no longer reflected reality on the ground. They reflected belief. If a unit was supposed to be holding, then on the map it was holding, even if, in real life, it had already been destroyed. You can almost feel the tension in those rooms, officers choosing their words carefully. Long pauses before anyone dared to speak, silence becoming safer than honesty. Professional judgment had not disappeared because it was wrong. It disappeared because it was dangerous. Hitler's daily military briefings became rituals. He stood over the maps, pointing with a pencil, moving division that existed only on paper. When reports contradicted his expectations, he questioned the messenger, not the message. Bad news was seen as defeatism. Good news, even if exaggerated, was rewarded. This environment trained commanders to tell Hitler what he wanted to hear. In 1942, Hitler made another decision driven by intuition rather than professional advice. He turned his focus south, toward oil. He believed capturing the Caucasus oil fields would solve Germany's fuel crisis and break the Soviet Union. His generals warned that the front was already too wide. They warned that splitting forces again would weaken everything. Hitler ignored them. The summer offensive pushed toward Stalingrad and the Caucasus. At first, progress looked promising. Then the city fighting began. Stalingrad became a nightmare of rubble, smoke, and constant combat. The professionals warned that the city had no strategic value anymore. They advised pulling back. Hitler refused. Stalingrad became personal. He had named it in his mind as a symbol. Losing it would mean losing face. His intuition told him that holding firm would break the enemy's will. He believed that sacrifice itself could create victory. When Soviet forces encircled the German Sixth Army in November 1942, the generals begged for permission to break out. They explained the math. The fuel was gone. Supplies were running out. The weather was closing in. Hitler said no. He trusted his instinct that the army could be supplied by air. He trusted his instinct that relief would arrive in time. He trusted his instinct more than the men who understood logistics, weather, and reality. The result was catastrophe. In February 1943, the remnants of the Sixth Army surrendered. Over 250,000 men were lost. It was not just a military defeat. It was proof that intuition alone could destroy an army. But even then, Hitler did not change. Instead, he doubled down. After Stalingrad, Hitler took even more direct control. He involved himself in smaller and smaller decisions. Battalion movements, weapon types, defensive lines. He believed that if he controlled everything tightly enough, he could force victory into existence. Professional judgment requires flexibility. Intuition, when combined with ego, demands control. By 1943, Germany's generals had become managers of disaster rather than planners of victory. They worked around Hitler, delayed reports, softened language, and sometimes quietly disobeyed orders just to save lives. But the system itself was broken. When Allied forces landed in Italy, Hitler refused strategic withdrawals. When the Allies prepared for Normandy, he trusted his instinct that the main invasion would come at Pas de Calais, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Even when the landings began on June 6, 1944, he delayed releasing armoured reserves because his intuition told him it was a diversion. Or hours were lost. Momentum vanished. Again, professional judgment had been overruled by belief. By the final year of the war, Hitler's intuition had completely replaced reality. He believed in miracle weapons. He believed armies could be rebuilt on paper. He believed loyalty could replace fuel, training, and numbers. In the bunkers beneath Berlin, as Soviet artillery closed in during April 1945, Hitler still issued orders to units that no longer existed. He still believed that willpower could change facts. He still believed that professionals had failed him, not that he had failed them. The truth was simpler and far more tragic. Hitler replaced professional judgment with personal intuition because early success convinced him he was infallible, because ideology taught him to distrust expertise, because fear of weakness made compromise impossible, and because admitting error would have shattered the image he had built of himself. Intuition can inspire bold action, but war is not won by belief alone. It is won by logistics, experience, and the willingness to accept limits. In the end, Hitler trusted himself more than reality, and reality, slowly and relentlessly, proved him wrong. The war did not end because Germany lacked brave soldiers or skilled officers. It ended because one man believed his instincts were stronger than truth itself. And once that belief took hold, there was no room left for judgment at all. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.